Hello and welcome, Exile, to the final update to the Cobra Lash Poison Assassin. We were able to get enough crit to drop Ungles and get a real int amulet. We were able to get ourselves up to 15,000 ES, and there's still further upgrades you can make to this character, which I will go into some details for those who really want to take this thing to the next level. I'm personally getting some build fever and I want to make my next character the league, so this is where I'm going to call it on the build. Now, as for the changes we made since last time, we dropped this split personality path, and I think it was just a bit too much of an overinvestment. And quite frankly, I'm not very convinced that these split personalities are worth it. For 46 int, 46 dex, this is just, it's not really that good of a split personality. Quite frankly, the percent intelligence Emperor's Wit Jewel would be better. A Bound by Destiny percent intelligence would be better. There's a lot of things that would be better than this split personality. I don't ultimately think it was worth it. This character does not have a justifiable enough pathing to make split personality worth it. Slash, if you're going to make it worth it, you probably need the ideal one, which is int plus flat ES. Now, as for getting the crit to drop Ungles, what all did we change? So that is where we get into this lab right here, the Feral Tiger Lab. I wasn't sure going into this league how consistent these would be. These tigers give 25 crit chance and I believe 6 attack and cast speed, which makes them technically more crit chance than a +1 power charge, as well as more damage because of the 30% attack speed. They're pretty consistent. You can generate them pretty fast. From my experience, this felt worth it. Makes your character feel a bit more smooth while mapping. You have a lot more attack speed, and this ended up being worth dropping the power charge for. In order to do this though, you need basically two things. I think you need a wind-up cluster for consistent power charge generation when you hit with a non-crit, as well as I think you need a +1 curse with Assassin's Mark attached to mark on hit. This ensures you have power charge generation outside of killing monsters, outside of not crit, because you want to be crit capped eventually, which means once you're crit capped, you're not generating power charges from killing monsters if you're at a boss, and you're not generating power charges from this. So that means we need one more additional source, which is Whispers of Doom, Assassin's Mark on hit. This also helps give us some base crit, another thing that can contribute to dropping Ungles. And then this switched pathing over here gives a bit of crit chance here and a bit of crit chance here. And that was enough for me to swap out of Ungles and grab a synth amulet with percent intelligence. I just threw a couple essences on this. This craft obviously isn't very good. I settled for a low tier of all attributes, or a mid tier, I should say. And that was good enough for me. Ultimately, if you want to min-max this, you'd rather have a high tier all attributes plus like crit multi, something like that would be a lot better in terms of single target and scaling. And of course, late game, Simplex is still, you know, the best in slot by a mile, by a long shot. Now, another thing we did outside of these changes to go to crit chance, we also gained a lot of ES, and we did that by swapping out a lot of our unique pieces. Our gloves and our boots were a Alberons, which was just a cheap percent int item, and a Thunderfist, which was our cheap pseudo 6-link. Swapping this gained us one, like 50% more damage. Quite frankly, level 30 Awake Added Lightning is only about 50% more damage at the amount of int we have. It's not that great. It's at maybe even a little bit less than that. So it doesn't really compete with a 6-link. It ends up being more like a 5-link at that point when you have so much flat added. On a league start, it can be a justifiable 6-link when you don't have that much flat, but once your flat starts getting pretty high, it becomes less and less valuable. Now, aside from that, we also dropped Alberons to get back some more flat ES, as well as give us access to more Abyssal Jewels. The reason we wanted to add in some Abyssal Jewels is the one last thing I didn't mention yet for fixing crit is Tech Rods. Tech Rods gives a bunch of crit chance based on Murderous Eyes. So you'll notice in our tree here, and here, we have a bunch of Murderous Eyes. You could just do 2 Tech Rods and get 160 crit chance and then get some rare jewels here. But I actually like Murderous Eyes a decent amount because they come with a stat that gives attack speed if you've crit recently, which is actually quite competitive. So I just got jewels with attack speed if you crit recently with some flat ES. Now, as for crafting these sorts of items, they might look pretty dang strong, but it's a lot easier than you would think. Because of the Genesis tree generating really good fractures, that makes your base cost very, very reasonable. You can buy either flat ES or percent ES fractured on Warlock gloves and boots, and then all you want to do is use a fossil combination, which I have right here, which is a fundamental Hollow and Sanctify. This target's basically giving you a high tier of attribute. The idea is you're trying to hit your suffixes first, and then you'll craft your prefixes after, because what this allows you to do is you'll hit int plus abyssal socket, and then ideally you just want like some extra miscellaneous res if you can get it. And then on top of that, Bristle Matrons, very cheap on trade right now, guarantee if you have all full suffixes, the only meta mod it can add is suffixes can't be changed, which allows you to do like Reforged Defense, or in the case of boots, you can do just a Veiled Chaos, block mana, and you're like 90% chance to get movement speed. If you don't hit movement speed, you just do another Bristle Matron and you go again. So it's one of these targeted ways where you force the suffixes, since you had a fractured prefixes, then when you unveil, you get another targeted prefix, and then you just craft either flat or percent of the other one you're missing. So that's how the boots crafts work. As for the gloves, I'd probably just do a Reforged Defense with a Bristle Matron, Reforged Defense, and then craft the last affix you need. And of course, if it fills affixes and you don't hit mods you want, you can annul off extra mods by using Eldritch Annuls with the Exarch currency making Exarch dominant. So yeah, that was the big improvements for boots and gloves. They're actually a lot easier to craft than you might think, so look into it. And then as for the body armor craft, this one was a little bit more involved. I was basically trying to buy body armors that already had decent energy shield and decent int, and then slamming a Crusader mod. It's roughly 1k weighting out of 3.25k is in percent intelligence. Both tier 1 is 500 weighting and tier 2 is 500 weighting. So it's roughly around a 1 in 3-ish, a little bit worse than that to slam percent intelligence. I took like 9 chess pieces to hit percent intelligence, so it was a bit rough for me, but that's the idea. You get yourself a chess piece that has good ES, a decent flat int number, and then you slam on a Crusader Orb. You can also just go Eldritch Influence for less damage taken per int, and it is a lot better tank-wise to do that. So keep that in mind. Eldritch currency is kind of insane, and don't necessarily snuff that option if you're considering it. You will probably need Crusader Influence, though, if you want to push for Bound by Destiny 15% int if you have 2 Crusader items. So that is a rundown of the more recent gear upgrades. Now let's talk upgrading the character past this. I mentioned earlier we did a few Ubers, and we would have been able to do all of them had I done this next following upgrade, which is swapping to a shield. Quite frankly, I don't want to spend too much more currency on the character because I want to save some money for doing my next character. And to do this next upgrade, it would be kind of an expensive one. What you want to go for is a shield with recover on block, and ideally hybrid. You want it to be a hybrid evasion ES base. This allows you to get both enough evasion to support Ghost Dance. Right now, since I only have like 10k evasion, we don't have that much base evasion because Grace right now is only giving 1600 evasion. If I got a hybrid shield, that would pretty much double this number because our base evasion would double because the hybrid shields rolls like 1600. This would go to 20k evasion. All of a sudden, we could click Ghost Dance again, so that would be a big plus. The other plus is you could start going into things like Tempest Shield and investing, reallocating some of your points into block is what I'd recommend. And for the shield, you want to have a shield that has hybrid evasion ES percent, hybrid flat, and then your other third stat needs to be block chance. What that allows is it allows for a shield that has like 40 base attack block. It pairs really well with masteries. For example, like a mastery, this block mastery here would be a lot of spell block. It'd be like 8 spell block plus another 18 spell block. Right there, you'd be at like 50 spell block. So if you change your pathing to go under instead of over, add in this block wheel, it goes a long way to get you closer to that 40-40 block. And then if you go up here and grab this attack block node, all of a sudden you're getting closer to the 60-70 spell block, attack block. With recover on block, it basically will start making you feel invincible in shotgun scenarios and a lot more dangerous scenarios. The reason this would have been the gateway difference in making this character feel comfortable in Ubers is the biggest weakness this character has is sustain. Leech with a poison-based character is just not super great because we're not really that heavy-handed into attack-based damage, which means our leech isn't really that great. And so we're missing a bit of recovery, especially during phases of bosses where they go and they can't be targeted. All of a sudden, a lot of our sustain, which is that leech, doesn't exist anymore, and we only have a little bit of regen. So Quite frankly, the biggest thing lacking this character is recovery, and that shield is what that would fill in for. It would help get in his go stance, recover on block. That's the idea. You would probably end up dropping the dual wield mastery, and maybe you would drop this cluster to start adding and facilitating some of those block nodes. And I think it would work out pretty well. You might say, okay, I'm losing 20% more attack speed. Isn't that a huge damage loss? Yes and no. Technically, if you lose this attack speed, it does make you attack slower. However, half of your attacks were coming from this weapon. And this is a little bit of a problem because Tech Rods only gives crit chance for your main hand. So although my crit chance right now, I think is 100% with my main hand, I don't think it's 100% with my offhand. And that would shore up some of that inconsistency there. Yes, my offhand gets a bit more crit multi, so when I do crit with it, it does have a more efficient poison, so to speak, but I don't think that inconsistency is worth it, considering if we don't crit, we deal literally no poison damage with Perfect Agony. Anywho, that gives a rundown of the changes to the character and where the character is currently at. Oh, and for a wind-up cluster, in case you're wondering, these clusters are super easy to make. There is only one crit mod you can hit on a large cluster. Just do Reforged Crit. It will always hit wind up. Just do it until you hit one other decent notable here so that your travel feels pretty good. All right, anyways, let's give you a showcase of what it looks like doing a T17. I have a big mod effect atlas, so we'll just run this real quick. I could get some scarabs, but I don't really want to think about a scarab strategy right now, and we'll just go ahead and give you guys a look at what the character is right now in T17 level content. I really need to... Let me change my filter. Nah, I'll change my filter later. Don't look at all the junk on the ground. My filter is I really need to get swapped to a much more strict filter, but I have not done so yet. So don't look too closely at the lack of proper filtering. All in all, what are my thoughts on the character? I'd probably put this character to 7 out of 10. I had a lot of fun with it. It has good clear. It has a good feeling to it in terms of like the elusive movement speed, that sort of stuff. However, not getting to the recover on block shield did leave a pretty big hole in terms of recovery, and it was very noticeable when I was doing Ubers. It doesn't really not too noticeable in like T16s at all, because T16s just aren't very dangerous. But in T17s and Ubers, you start to notice that lack of recover on block plus block shield layer that we'd really want. Another thing is I was a bit lazy on forcing in suppress. If you go that hybrid shield, you can get suppress into the character, which is pretty important to force in some more DR, and pairs obviously very well with evasion. Now I got to figure out where the hell I'm going to find this boss fight, which appears to be this way. Another thing is when you're doing, I was just thinking about this, when you're doing breaches, those breaches don't have or their walls end up blocking you, which is a little bit frustrating. Gonna turn around the other direction at any moment now. Sorry, what was I saying? Projectiles with the breach walls. A lot of things what I would like about this character is you can throw projectiles ahead, but whenever you run into those the breach mechanic, it just actually blocks your projectiles from hitting more enemies, which is a little bit frustrating for a projectile build. Weirdly enough, is your projectiles, as far as I can tell, can't throw through the walls until you go and delete the walls to then throw ahead of you. It's a little bit awkward. That's besides the point. Oh, one last thing about the character is we are playing usually with a clear setup, like that T17 was with a clear setup. If you want to do single target, like specifically you're doing a boss, you should swap greater multiple projectiles for something like Vicious Proj. I was swapping these in and out when doing single target for harder, heavier, tankier bosses. For example, that boss we just did, I could have killed 50% faster if I just swapped the sockets here. It didn't really matter too much. The DPS is pretty fine, but you get the idea. Hopefully you guys like the League Star. Hopefully you're having fun, but myself, I am getting pumped for my next build, which is going to hopefully be a walking blizzard with Cold Dot and some of the new things they've added, like the Tolfel wand, Wrathpith getting damage over time, and some stuff like that. So that'll be the next character. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. As always, thanks for watching, Exiles. Peace out, take care, and have a good one.